Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing? I go straight over to Instagram. Haribo Starmix 244 says, "Yes, I'm back." Me too. Yeah, I'm back firing on all cylinders. That was a pleasant holiday, I have to say. 2 weeks swanning around the Mediterranean on board a fantastic ship. I'll tell you more about it in the coming weeks. Lots and lots of things to enjoy. Lots of food and drink and partying and all of the things. But one of the highlights, and I know this is a strange thing to mention, but when you're on board of the ship, they give you one of these. I'll show you a bit more closely. There you are. That's it. It's basically a smart lanyard kind of deal. And it makes your life so easy. So you get on board, they give you the medallion, you wear it around your neck, you arrive at your stateroom. It was a cabin, but as they call it a stateroom, you arrive. It recognized both me and my wife, opened the door automatically, and when you close it at night or when you go out, you close it, and when you walk away about, a couple of feet, it locks it for you. You go to the bar, you flash your medallion, it takes your payment. You go to the restaurant, you flash your medallion, it takes your payment. You get off board the ship, and it logs the fact that you're off. When you come back, it logs the fact that you're back. Yeah, the whole thing is linked to an app. So on the rare occasions that myself and my wife went in opposite directions, her to the bar generally or the casino, me to the food, as you can probably tell, check the app. You can see precisely where on the ship you are both located at any given time. Absolutely fantastic. Honestly, if somebody could give me one of those for my normal life, my non-holiday life, I'd take it in a heartbeat. I do need to address the elephant in the room. Haribo Starmix has just said, "Shaved?" Question mark. Yes, I am. I did a holiday 6-7 years ago, bearded. And I was then doing a thing where basically I needed to look a bit smarter, so I shaved my beard off. And below my beard, well, above my beard, I had a tan. Below my beard, I was pure white. I mean, I'm not particularly brown now, but so this time I thought I'll negate all of that, take the beard off while I'm away, and see how we go. I'm sure the beard will come back at some point, but it probably won't be until the winter, because I have to say it feels quite nice. The wind on your chin. Let's have a look. Dan Cullen is here. Morning, Andy and Alex. They were very early doors. Dan says, "Welcome back to the UK." Morning all, says Steve Williamson. Where is Mark? Is this a new lad? Well, if you had said, "Is this a younger lad?" I'd have been even more pleased. I do need to say very quickly, Steve Williamson, good morning to you. Thank you for all your Volvo stuff that I've been watching with interest over the past few weeks. But it also does mean that I need to say good morning to Steve Williamson's partner in crime, Ed Butler, for it is his birthday today. Happy birthday, Ed. I haven't seen him in the chat, but Ed, if you're around, please accept our warmest regards for your birthday. Rockbusters Inc. has just said, "Morning, Mark," over on Instagram. Good morning to you as well. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Dr. Yvonne Waterman says, "Try the AirTag." I do actually use an AirTag, mainly to keep track of where my computer is. Actually, you look smarter without a beard, if you will forgive me. Listen, I'll take any compliment you care to throw at me. But yes, I have to say, I'd kind of forgotten what I looked like. I was in my head, I was more handsome under the beard. I was a little surprised by what I found once I'd taken it off, but yeah, we are where we are. Dan Cullen says, "Why do people ring this time of the morning when you're busy?" Yeah, I know. I think I know that feeling. My phone has, I wouldn't say it's rung off the hook this morning, but it has been very busy because obviously I put up an out of office notice, so everybody in the world, or in the demolition world, knew that I was away and knew exactly when I was going to be back. So they've saved up their phone calls, and I think it's going to be a busy day on the phone. So yes, it is that time. As I say, I will be telling you more about the cruise. And it does get a brief, well, it kind of gets quite a big mention actually in today's morning monologue, which is at the very end of the show. Hope you can stick around for that. The working title, I guess, of today's morning monologue is "I Am a Diggerholic." And if you're watching this, you may well be too. We'll come to that at the end. But without further ado, let me roll the intro. Got to remember how to do these things. Let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. It feels quite jarring to say this because the last show that I did here, sat here, was back in July. Yes, last month. So it is Monday, the 11th of August. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. And in today's show, Volvo unveils its next generation of wheel loaders. Develon shows off its latest materials handler. Kemroc rips rock. Try saying that after you've had a few pints. And Komatsu Smart Construction gets smarter still. Plus, in my morning monologue, as I've already intimated, I am a diggerholic, and you might be too. Before we get on, now, let me just very quickly remind you of our question of the day. It's on the oh, it should be in the chat anyway, but I have one of these for it. Yeah, my question of the day today is a kind of reflection on the nomadic nature of work in the construction equipment field. And that question is this: over the course of your career, how many employers do you think you've had? Mine was a very easy set of maths. Looking back at my own career, I've had two, just two. That's not including the paper round. I guess that would make it three, but I've had two. Um, Admittedly, I did move around within the second of my two employers. I shifted from one magazine to another, and then back again. But my payslip was always from the same overall company. But what about you? One of the things that triggered this in my mind, my addled mind, met a guy while I was onto ship on the Sun Princess, who mentioned casually and in passing, seriously, that he worked for NASA. Yeah, there was but very very quickly the cruise director actually said that us Brits were very much in the minority on the ship. There was only about 350 of us. There was about 1,500 Americans and about 1,500 Australians as well. A few Canadians and so on down the line. But yeah, we were very much in the minority. But anyway, the guy that I was talking to worked for NASA. He lived and was based in Houston. And I said to him, NASA? That's fascinating. And he said, well, it's not exactly NASA. He said, I work for NASA, but through a different company. And then he managed to turn the fact that he worked for NASA into one of the most boring conversations I've ever had in my life. And it was something like, oh, well, I started my career with McDonnell Douglas, and we were taken over by Boeing, and then Boeing was absorbed into Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin formed a joint venture with. And at the end of it, it was like, so what do you do? And it turns out he made a widget, a a widget that allows spacecraft to dock with the International Space Station. The guy was clearly very, very smart, but what he made was basically a bit of engineering metalwork that locked the spacecraft into the space station. Yeah, but by the time he got to the point where he was telling me exactly what it was he did, I'd kind of lost the will to live. Very grateful that I was sat by the bar. Let's have a look. We've had some late arrivals, and it's good to see them. Chris Ford is here. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning to you, Chris. And Jim Turner is here as well. Morning, Chris. Jim. Chris Ford, going back to our question of the day, which I will come back to in just a moment. Question of the day. Two employers in his career, then the hardest of them all, me. It's exactly the same as me. I mean, I went freelance in 1990. So for the past 35 years, I have worked for this guy, this idiot. Steve Williamson, 5. Bricklayer when he left school, digger job, offshore digger job, and now the company I'm with. 5, that's not bad. I bet there's some bigger numbers to come. Jim Turner says, can't comment on Facebook, so I've come over here. What's playing up with Facebook, I wonder? And Dan is saying, good morning to the usual gang. Good morning to you one and all. It is Jim Turner, 9. Now, that's more like the kind of figures I was expecting. Yeah, and I wonder about Dan. Dan, come on. I mean, you're forever switching employers. How many employers do you think you've worked for? Love to hear from you. Has anyone seen Ken this morning? Ken, are you out there? Hope you're okay. Yes, it is time to get the show underway, and we're going to be showing you the latest generation Volvo wheel loaders. I'm not going to comment too much on them because Steve Williamson is in the chat, and he's seen these things up close and personal. I'll show them to you in just a moment. Our friend Haribo Style Mix has just said, question of the day, how many employers have you had? Just the one, just his summer job. Listen, we all start somewhere. We all start somewhere. You'll rack them up over the over the years, trust me. Yes, Volvo have got a new generation of wheel loaders. I know Steve Williamson has seen them up close. I think he's probably even driven one or two of them. But here is what they look like. So, I'll throw this over to Steve. He says I operated every one of them and some. He also says comfort is amazing, especially when you're using the joystick steering, quick and responsive. I had a bit of a mental block, not with Volvo. I was with Caterpillar when they introduced their stick steer system. Really freaked me out. Freaked me out. It was I can only imagine it must be like being in a car with automatic driving. Feels really strange not to be hanging on to you know, Haribo Starmix, nice back camera screen. Listen, Volvo, nice everything, I would have thought. Going back to the chat, um, Dan Cullen, I asked how many employers he's had. Lost count of 14, but I can count the amount of those worth working for. Yeah, there's a very big difference between the two. Jim Turner, apparently Jim Turner and Chris Ford have finally got to meet. Now, I actually thought you guys already knew each other. I'm assuming you met at this vintage plant fair because Chris says, Jim rather says, Chris, what was the crack with the track motor? I haven't had an answer on that, but I'm sure we will in fullness of time. Andy Thornton says, jobs can sound a lot more interesting by the title than the reality. I was a director for an investment management company for former VP, Vice President Al Gore. Al Gore. Yeah. Great name drop at a dinner party, but that's about it. Hey, listen, I'd dine out on that for the rest of my life. But, director for Al Gore. Excuse me. That's the downside of traveling on a cruise ship, is the fact that you're locked up with 4,500 disease-ridden people. So I've got off the ship coughing and spluttering and sneezing like a good one. Dan Cullen says, I found Volvo very light on the tail end compared to Doosan, etc. Steve, over to you. I mean, I don't think there is actually a machine out there that is entirely beyond reproach, but I have to say, my experience of Volvo, there's not much wrong with them. Not much at all. Excuse me again. It's an American cough. I can hear the accent. I'm sure the Americans gave it to me. Anywho, it is time to press on because we've got plenty more to show you. We're talking Develon in just a moment after a bit of this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Going back to Jim's question about what was the question? What was the crack with the track motor? Chris Ford says, "Don't know, Jim. We think the track brake came on and wouldn't disengage. We'll get it all freed off. There's no steel in the gearbox, but we'll strip it down to make sure." Good to hear. Sorry, coughing again. Yes, Develon. Develon, and more specifically, Develon materials handlers. They have a new one, and it looks like this.
Meet the Develon DX 160WMH, ready for the work that moves the world every single day.
Question of the day so far. No, not my question of the day. The question of the day incoming from the viewers. Probably this. Dan Cullen says, "Now here's a question. When the cab's raised, are the doors locked?" That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer. If there's anybody out there in the engineering world, particularly from the likes of Develon or Caterpillar or Senebogen, anybody that makes materials handlers, is there some sort of automatic lock system so that you raise the cab and you can't kind of lose concentration, step out for a pee, and find that you're 20 feet in the air? I'd like to know. I'd like to know the answer. Gary Muirhead. Good morning, Mark and gang. Welcome back, Mr. NT. Thank you very much indeed, Gary. It is largely good to be back. It is largely good to be back. I could have taken another week on the ship quite easily without too much fuss. Do you know one of the highlights was the digital detox? You can buy, fairly costly, you can buy a Wi-Fi package for the ship, which allows you to remain in contact with the outside world, both through telephone, but also internet and email and everything else. I opted not to do it this time. It's been a long while since I had a proper actual holiday. I've been away a bit, off to Italy and stuff like that. I've been away a bit, but I haven't really had a holiday for a good few years. So I decided it was time for a digital detox. And I tell you what, well, two things. The peace and quiet was lovely. Obviously, when I turned my phone back on again, when I finally made landfall in Barcelona, yeah, I was somewhat inundated. But the other thing that really astonished me, and it probably shouldn't because there is a high volume of spam email out there. When I actually got back to here, the office, the studio, my house, turned on my computer, and the computer said that I had 1,548 email messages. Quite daunting, right? I went through them, took out the spam, took out the things that didn't actually need a response. Out of 1,548 messages, I ended up with 14 that actually required some kind of action. The rest were either spam or something that required no interaction from me whatsoever. 1%. 1%. Dan says, for a 16-ton machine, the boom looks very light. Is that a side effect of the materials handler? Is that a side effect of the materials handler? Are you allowing, are you trying to save weight so that you can lift more? I don't know. That crane guy, Tristan May, says, "Good morning, Mark. Long time no see. Sorry, not joined for a while. It's the joys of being on long-term night shifts." Ah, yes. I've done a few night shifts, probably about 4 in my life, and they are tough. It's the switching back that I always used to struggle with. Yeah, switching back with all your, what are they? The circadian rhythms all up the swanny really does screw you up. But good morning, Tris. Good to see you here, mate. I hope you're fitting well. Jim Turner says, Dan, I haven't uploaded the plant footage from Cromford yet. It must be well over half an hour. Looking forward to seeing that. Digital detox is great, Dan Cullen says. Yes, it is. Dan Cullen says, Tristan, how did you get on in the competition? Yeah, that was the leap hair competition. I know a lot of us guys actually voted for you. How did you get on? Gary says, how long is the beard staying off? As many of you know, and if you look very closely in the background, if I move my chair, as you probably are aware, I am a Stephen King fan. Stephen King is the author, just in case you don't know. Stephen King is clean shaven for about 9 months of the year, but he lives in Maine, in New England, in the States, and he basically gets frozen in for about 3 months of the year, at which point he grows a beard. I'm not expected to be frozen in leafy Surrey, but I might do the same. I might actually, keep the shininess and yeah, grow the beard back for the winter and then take it off again in the spring. Gary Muirhead, yeah, good question. Bloody good question. Has anyone seen where the weekend has gone? 1 minute it was Friday night, and the next thing it's Monday morning. Imagine how I felt. We've been building up to our holiday for quite some time. This time, well, in actual fact, this time 2 weeks ago, I was on a train into London, which would take us to Stansted, which would take us to Rome, which would take us to Civitavecchia, where we caught the ship. 2 weeks ago today, and in a blink of an eye, gone. Tristan Mays says, let's not talk about that competition. I can only assume he was one of many runners up. But appreciate all you that did vote for me, though. You're very welcome. I think it was a fix. I think it was a fix. Surely that crane guy in the UK should be the winner. Just saying. I'm just disappointed that I couldn't stack stones all weekend. I had to settle for JC Ball's hospitality van instead. £6 for an ice cream, £8 for a burger. Yeah, I've seen a little bit of that. But one of the guys, and I have to say, one of the nicest guys I met while I was on the ship, was an Aussie. We were sat at dinner on a table of two, and sat beside us was another table of two, and we got to chatting. And he was, it turns out, he was a trauma counsellor, which kind of piqued my interest because, we do talk about mental health and so on down the line. So, we had a fairly far-reaching conversation. But he had basically opted for the biggest or most expensive package on the ship. So he had free Wi-Fi and free drinks and free this and free that and free everything else. He had been to the spa. There's a place on board the Sun Princess called the Lotus Spa, and in a single session he'd spent $1,100. And now the guy was pleasant enough, but yeah, he was probably 50 odd, bald, in fairly good shape, but certainly no Brad Pitt. $1,100, so about 900 quid or thereabouts. Didn't look any better for it. Gotta tell you, didn't look any better for it. Tristan says, I smelt a rat considering the ones that win with the votes that had little online presence. Yeah, I wonder. Trouble with these, I mean, I've had it work in my favour before now, so I can't actually denounce these competitions. Back in 2018, I won a Social Media Week award for use of online video. And the absolute truth was there were other people in the category who were doing better video and better content than I was. But I called upon our assembled masses of readers to vote for me. And sure enough, we won by some considerable margin. Were we the best? No, we weren't. Still got the award somewhere. I'll dig it out one of these days. I'll show it to you. Just to boast a little bit. Gary didn't get home till 9 o'clock Friday night. Saturday was gone and come to Woking Sunday. Wow, some of the houses there are unbelievable. If you come back again, take yourself down 7 Hills Road in just up the road from Woking. There's a few famous houses down there, including that of Mr. Cliff Richard. You may have seen it on the TV when the police swooped upon it, wrongly as it turns out. Yeah. As regards the question of the day, I've been with the current crowd for about 11 years. That's the longest I've ever been at the same place. Nearly jacked a few times, but my gripes have always been sorted so far. Gary Muirhead says, how was the cruise? We booked for a Greece Island cruise next year for our 25th wedding anniversary. Funnily enough, Gary, well, how was the cruise? It was fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, I have actually written 2 Princess Cruises, and I won't read it to you because it's not on this computer, but I've written to them because, you know, being a Brit, I do like to moan a bit. As you probably gathered from watching the show, I do like to moan. I do like to complain and point out faults. Couldn't find one. Couldn't find one. The ship was, I mean, it's only about a year old, so the ship was brand spanking new, absolutely enormous, and everything there was top notch. The food was amazing. The drink was amazing. The staff were incredible. The places that we visited were awesome. As I say, the old medallion system was incredible. And going back to Gary's question, we are planning to do another cruise next year at some point. I think we're going to do Japan the year after. We were originally planning to do Japan next year, but it's a Conexpo year next year, which means I'm going to be out of the country for a fair old time. And my wife obviously comes along with me, and she struggles to get the holiday time off. So I think we may do Conexpo next year and then do Japan the year after. So one of the places we've been looking to, I mean, I'd happily do the same route again. I'd happily go to Sicily and to Malaga and to Cartagena, by the way. What a lovely place that is. Never been there before. I didn't really know what to expect, but it's lovely. I would imagine it's a lot like Spain would have been about 40 years ago before the Brits turned up with their kiss me quick hats and everything else. Cartagena, if you get a chance, absolutely gorgeous. But yes, going back to Gary's question, there are a couple of cruises that take in part of what we've done, so some of Italy and everything else, but also go over into Greece. I wouldn't mind a bit of that. Sail around the Aegean just a little bit. That would be absolutely awesome. I didn't spend much on Snap, Chris. The biggest expense was a few bits from the auction. Yeah, unfortunately, when you are a captive audience, they can play with the price a little bit. I always think that when you go to the football, you go to a concert or something like that, and you do get soundly ripped off. I didn't know that Eric Clapton's son is buried in Ripley. I didn't know that either. I'll tell you what I do know about Ripley though. Fantastic fishing. There's the Wey River, the River Wey, flows through Ripley, and also the Wey Navigation Canal flows through Ripley. Some damn fine fishing there. If anybody wants to go and catch a few chub, I would recommend the Wey at Ripley. And I know, I mean, I didn't know Eric Clapton's son was buried in Ripley, but I know that Eric Clapton was and possibly still is a resident of Ripley. So yeah, not wholly surprising. There we are. Anyway, we're going to rip rock in a second, and we'll be back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Dan says the lady he's staying with said there's a fantastic chip shop in Ripley. I don't know that. But let me know, because I do visit occasionally. Fishing rod in hand. Keep me informed. Yes, it is time to rip some rock with the fine folks at Kemroc. I play this partly because I'm a bit of a Kemroc fan. Met some of their guys over in Italy a few weeks back. The product is very good and the application is very good, but I'm playing it at least in part for the guy's accent. Enjoy.
It's an add-on section of a subdivision with 49 homes going in, putting all the underground utilities in. Well, by using the Kemroc, we're able to grind out and reuse probably 96-97% of the material back in the ditch and in fill areas, where if we hoe rammed it out, we would have to haul all that rock off, find a place to get rid of it, bring material back in to refill the ditches. So in the long run, it's a little cheaper to actually use the Kemroc, plus it'll get about twice the footage of a hoe ram for the same size machine that it's running on. Okay, if we were using the hoe ram to take this out because they didn't want to blast here due to the cost of blasting, getting roughly 1 cubic yard of material removed an hour in a trench. And with the Kemroc, we could remove 2 to 2.5 cubic yards per hour. It's all here. You have a few chunky rocks here or there that you wind up digging out, but most of it gets used right back. Oh, they're easy to use. You can make nice clean walls that once you get down, you don't have to have any shoring because, you can walk in a solid trench. If you hoe ram one or blast one, you got to add shoring to your cost. Yes, very, very good. We haven't had any issues with this machine, other than we did make a mistake on not turning the valve on one day, but they came right out, they got it fixed, bring our tools out. I mean, they're phenomenal to work with. Well, I've used them for quite some time now on various projects, and I haven't had any issues with any breakdowns in them. I haven't had anything break down so far on any of them I've ever had.
Mike, on behalf of CMC and Kemroc, we appreciate your business. We look forward to doing more with you in the future.
Oh yes, definitely.
Like I say, worth it for the accent, and Dan Cullen agrees. Yeah, love the accent. Absolutely right. Is Kemroc in the UK? Yes, they are available in the UK. No, can't remember who their dealer is. Is he in Mallow? International marketers? May well be. I don't know. Can't remember. Jim, what you need is to make with a barbecue. All I took was beer, cider, and sausages. Sounds like a fun day out. Fantastic stuff. We've got one more video to show you, which I will play for you in just a moment, and then we'll be on to my morning monologue, and then we can all have a proper chin wag. So I'll be back after this. Jim Turner says, our lot, Akbok, should have taken their Bowser barbecue, obviously. They missed a trick there. Akmok, if you're listening, barbecue time. Yes, one final video, and then we can all have a bit of a catch-up and a chat. This video comes from the fine folks at Komatsu. Komatsu have been banging the drum for smart construction for more than a decade, I would guess. Well over a decade, in actual fact. But they keep getting smarter. This is their latest video on that very subject.
Welcome to Komatsu Smart Construction. Here's a quick overview of the powerful tools you now have access to that can help you work more efficiently and profitably. Smart Construction Remote gives you access to your machines over the internet. With it, you can see the precise location of your IMC machines. See the list of your fleet connected to Smart Construction Remote, including Tapcon and Trimble devices. Send 3D design files to your machines with the click of a button and remotely view in-cab information to help an operator troubleshoot. Smart Construction Dashboard provides you a digital 3D twin of your site, helpful in estimating, tracking progress, and communicating with stakeholders. Get terrain data from the work your IMC-equipped machines do each day, as well as work machines equipped with Smart Construction 3D machine guidance and drone flights do. Easily see where your IMC excavators have dug, measure and verify linear footage for billing and inspect profiles of the trenches. You can see daily progress of material moved by your IMC dozers, measure volumes, and calculate progress against your project design. Smart Construction Fleet can streamline your paperwork with its payload monitoring feature. Track loads electronically, eliminating paper slips and making reporting easier than ever. Talk with your Komatsu dealer about getting started with your Smart Construction solutions today.
Peter McKenna. Boy, I've missed Peter McKenna. He says, bloody hell, we have a new presenter. You look years younger, Mark. Well, thank you very much indeed, Peter. That's much appreciated. That's about it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues, and I hope to see you again very soon. No more gaps for a little while, so I'll be here tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. My eyes are neither bright and my tail isn't that bushy, but you get the idea. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back immediately after a smidgen of I have a condition. It's an obsession, an addiction, and a compulsion, all rolled into one. Thankfully, my condition is not life-threatening, but it is life-altering. My condition is entirely self-diagnosed, but based upon the overwhelming evidence, I feel that a medical diagnosis would be purely academic. So it's time for me to come clean about my issue. So this is my confession. My name is Mark, and I'm a diggerholic. Now, admittedly, I've been writing about demolition and construction equipment for 3.5 decades, so it's not surprising that I have a fondness for the subject. So how do I know that my fondness has grown into an obsession? Allow me to give you a few very recent examples. As you know, I've just returned from a cruise around the Mediterranean on board the stunning Sun Princess cruise liner. My wife and I met the ship in the Italian town of Civitavecchia. Having arrived the night before on the train from Rome, we awoke on the morning of our departure, filled with eager anticipation. We weren't due to board until 11 a.m., so we had time to walk along the seafront, drink coffee, and admire the stunning and enormous ship that would be our home for 2 weeks, which docked over in the distance. But while my wife was enjoying her morning espresso and taking photos of fine Italian architecture, I was down at the water's edge, watching a Manitou telescopic handler working on a coastal defence project. A few days later, we arrived in Naples. I'd opted out of the ship's Wi-Fi package as I was keen to give myself a full digital detox. But as the ship docked, I spied a Caterpillar excavator working on a jetty extension. I then spent hours kicking myself for not packing my drone in order to catch some aerial footage of the machine in action. And then perhaps the most extreme example. In Malaga, my wife and I walked barefoot along the surf line, the warm Mediterranean lapping at our ankles. To my left, children Do that again. To my left, children frolicked in the sea. To my right, handsome and oiled young men and beautiful, lithe and topless young women soaked up the sun's rays. Meanwhile, my eyes were focused on a bobcat skid steer cleaning up the beach in the distance. Now, my condition has one or two strange quirks. The first is that my obsession is very rarely tactile. I have a friend who's a musician. I'm going to pronounce that correctly. I have a friend who is a musician. He's been in countless almost successful bands over the years, and he now has a collection of more than a dozen very fine and very expensive guitars. Although he has his favourites, he plays them all. Some because of how they sound, some for how they feel in his hands, and some for how their specific tone matches the mood of the song he's playing. My youngest son, Fred, has recently discovered the joys and the curse of golf. It's not unusual for him to play 5 and 6 times per week. In fact, he regularly finishes his allotted 18 holes returns to the clubhouse, pays his money, and then plays another 18 holes immediately afterwards. Unlike my friend's guitars and my son's golf, my obsession is very rarely hands-on. On the rare occasions I do get to operate machines, I do so badly. I much prefer to admire them from a distance while the true experts make them sing and dance. I am in effect a voyeur, the peeping Tom of the plant world. The other strange and unexpected quirk of my condition is that it is apparently contagious. My son returned from golf a few weeks ago to tell me there was a JCB mini excavator doing some course maintenance on the adjacent 9-hole public course. Even more specific, my wife came home from a trip to the supermarket to inform me there were roadworks taking place close by. They were using a Kubota KX 101, she said. While I was taking the fact that my wife knew what a Kubota mini excavator looked like, she then added, it looked like an older generation model. She has caught the bug, a bug for which there is no known cure. My wife and I returned from our cruise via Barcelona. Predictably, these days, our flight was delayed, so we were sat in the departure lounge for a few hours. My wife was scrolling through her phone's camera roll, an Italian church, a Neapolitan pizza, Sicilian architecture, the narrow streets of Cartagena, and the tree-lined boulevards of Malaga, plus shots of me holding various garish cocktails of every hue. To my right, a young couple, possibly returning from their first holiday together, were excitedly scrolling through Instagram, looking at photos and videos they'd shot themselves and catching up with their friends' summer activities. Me? I was sat there looking at YouTube videos of construction and demolition equipment, a faraway look in my eyes. As I said at the outset, my condition is merely life-altering. But there is no known remedy. There is no 12-step program to wean me off diggers, dozers, wheel loaders, and dump trucks. As far as I can ascertain, there are no local support groups to set me on the path to recovery. But even if there were, I'm not sure I'd attend. My obsession might be unhealthy, but I have no intention of giving it up. So this, then, is my confession, a public acknowledgement of my condition. My name is Mark, and I'm a diggerholic. And if you're still watching this, there's a very strong possibility. I'll do that again. And if you're still watching this, there's a very strong possibility that you are too. There you are. I am a self-confessed diggerholic. And all of that, absolutely true. Literally, as I say, first proper day of the holiday. We flew to Rome, took the train down to Civitavecchia, arrived in the early hours of the evening. We went out for dinner and so on. But we woke up on the day that we were supposed to be going off on our cruise, walked down to the water's edge, and our ship was, I guess, half a mile away, but given the size of it, very, very clearly visible. And my wife was excitedly taking photographs of it on the Zoom function on her iPhone, and she was drinking her coffee and everything else. And I kind of veered off to one side because there was a Manitou putting together some coastal defence works. And at which point you think, you might have a problem. And the worst one of all, as I say, walking along the beach at Malaga, shorts on, my shoes in my hand, Mediterranean warmly lapping around my ankles, and there are semi-naked women all along, and I'm looking at a bobcat. As I say, I am confessing right here, right now, I have a problem. Peter McKenna says, I have to admit, I can't count my list of employers on neither hands nor feet. It's been a few then, has it? Been a few. A Digger Group over on Instagram just joined us. Good morning to Digger Group. That's Digga, not Digger, Digger. It's Digger. Dan Carn says, I know the feeling. I live and dream plant and equipment. If you get a chance, the article upon which that monologue was based will be appearing on Instagram in about 14 minutes time. Not on Instagram, on LinkedIn in about 14 minutes time. It will also be appearing as a standalone video in about an hour or two, I would guess, over on YouTube. If you have a look at the thumbnail, it is actually a person, a man, lying in bed dreaming of diggers. Dan, I feel your pain. I really do. Um, over on Twitch, there we have a lady called Barbara. Barbara Florence. How are you? Well, Barbara, very well. Thank you for asking. Jim Turner, it's in my blood. My dad my dad and uncles were plant operators, and two of my cousins are plant fitters. It's always been more than a job. It's just life. Yeah, yeah. As I say, I mean, I presented you with some extreme examples there, but it is literally, I mean, in one instant, we were in where were we? Messina in Sicily. And it's lovely. I don't know if anyone's been to Messina, and it's sunny, big, wide open boulevards and streets and cafes, and very Italian and lovely palm trees and all the things. And I'm walking along, and I could hear, but quite faintly, I could hear the sound of a hydraulic breaker. Had to go and find it. Had to go, had to go and find it. What's that about? You're on holiday. Nobody's paying you to do it. Nobody is requiring you to do it. Nobody's insisting that you go and have a look. But I did. It wasn't up to much, to be honest. It was only doing a bit of road repair, but I had to go and find it. It was like it was calling to me. Uncle Zogs says I agree completely. Thank you very much indeed. Something just went on Instagram. I don't know what that was. Dan says, I'm a diesel machinaholic. Yeah, it does. And bearing in mind, I mean, a lot of you guys, I mean, to use Jim as an example, Jim, it is in his blood. It's not in mine. Nobody in my family has worked in demolition or construction. I was a jobbing journalist. I've written about hotels and restaurants, and I've written about boats, and I've written about office equipment. And then I arrived in the field of construction, and it got under my skin, and I never left. And here I am, 35 plus years later, still doing it, and still find it endlessly fascinating. Bizarre, right? Bizarre. I don't. I always tell myself it's the people that are, and that's part of the reason I enjoy the chat on this show, is the people that are around the industry are, sort of the earth up by your bootstraps, bit rough around the edges, diamonds in the rough, and all of that kind of thing. I always tell myself that's part of it, but I'm not absolutely sure that is it. There is something I find interesting and fascinating about the engineering of it all. When you think about the materials, the Develon materials handler we showed earlier, the fact that somebody has looked at it and thought, well, if we could make the cab go up and look down and be able to do what it does, and somebody went, yeah, we could do that. I mean, I had some of the same feelings on the ship. On board the ship, there were, I think it was something like 2,100 staff and 4,500 passengers. So all told, you're talking about more than 6,500 people on a ship. A ship with about a dozen restaurants, 7 or 8 bars, 5 different swimming pools, a gym, 2 theatres, and there was part of me walking around thinking, well, this is nice. This is not a bad place to be spending your time. But there was another bit of me thinking, I'm basically on board a floating city. How did they come up with this? How did somebody sit down and say, you know what we need? We need a ship big enough for 4,500 passengers, all safe and secure. It's ridiculous. It really is. And even when you look at some of the things that go on, I mean, we spoke to the guy that was taking care of our, cleaning and tidying our stateroom, and he reckons he clocks up something like 24 kilometers each day, walking back and forth, which is not hard. I mean, it's the ship is, I think we worked out it was about 0.4 of a kilometer long, so it's a big sucker. So, clocking up the steps, I'm not entirely surprised by that. But it's when you see things like, they take on, obviously they take on fuel, but they take on produce as well. And where were I'm not entirely sure where we were. May have been Naples. We came back. We had a mooch around Naples. Had a Neapolitan pizza, which was very nice, by the way. Came back, and there you are. They're loading the ship with produce, and they had effectively a low loader, and all it contained was tomatoes. Just crate after crate after crate after crate of tomatoes. Now, I realise tomatoes are in a lot of things, not just your salads and your cheese and tomato sandwiches, but in sauces and stuff like that. But we're talking a lorry load of tomatoes. Yeah. Hang on a minute. Well, there we are. That's what I was looking for. Not Jim, it's Peter. I was speaking to a mate yesterday. He stated he still loves his job, but he can't stand the people that work in it nowadays. Most can't be asked working or want money for doing nothing. Unfortunately, and I don't want to sound like the miserable old sod. I am old and I am miserable, but I don't want to sound like that. I don't think that's unique to the world of construction or demolition or quarrying or waste or anything like that. I think that feels like a universal thing. When I look at those that work in a similar field to me, there are exceptions. I would single out Mike Wolf over at Global Highways, who still does the job of journalism like a journalist. But you look at some of the magazines, and it's either reproduced press releases or half-assed attempts at writing, just filling column inches. And that's not what the job was ever supposed to be about. Excuse me a sec. Andy Thornton says, I don't know much about diggers, but could you need a session of JCB, joystick cognitive behavior? Well done on the alliteration there. That's not alliteration. What is that? I know what you mean. But yes, I don't want to be cured, though. That's the weird thing. I don't want to be cured. I quite appreciate my obsession. And what I find strange, and I often describe myself, well, I often tell people that I'm a fisherman. I didn't get to go fishing at all last year through one thing and another. I mean, part of it was down to spending time sort of ferrying my father-in-law to and from dialysis, which reduced the amount of spare time that I had. Not that I regret it. It's good times, and I miss it enormously. But I didn't go fishing at all last year, and I am yet to take a rod out of its bag this year as well. And yes, there is a bit of me that thinks, we'd love to get out. I mean, this afternoon, the sun is shining. I'm just up the road from a very nice canal where I know I would go and catch fish and have a fine old time. But I'm okay. It's not, I'd like to go fishing, but it's not the end of the world. But the notion, as I say, I've just been on a 2-week holiday, or best part of a 2-week holiday. And even while I was on holiday, I was still fanning the flames of my obsession with plant and equipment. Crazy. And it's Peter McKenna says it's a universal thing. Same in the road transport industry too. Incidentally, Peter, you sent me a note. Thank you for that. I forgot to mention this. You sent me a note over the weekend, which I didn't get to respond to purely because I was driving at the time that it arrived. But you sent me a message about all that is wrong with your industry, and the fact that nobody seems willing or able to fix it. I did find it really, really interesting, particularly when I read it and then I reread it. And when I reread it, that notion of why would the higher ups of an industry fix what is quite clearly broken? I have started to kick that as an idea around. I may even have that as my morning monologue tomorrow. I'll keep you posted. But Peter, if I do that, which is likely, I promise I will give you full credit for it, because I did find it really, really interesting, and I do think that it's a reflection. obviously the road transport industry and the construction industry, they kind of run parallel. They're not wholly distant from each other. But I wonder if you really started to analyze other sectors, manufacturing, retail, or whatever, I think you'd probably find exactly the same thing. And nobody's doing anything about it because the will isn't there. Excuse me, there's no profit to be made in fixing that which is broken, and therefore that which is broken stays that way. As I say, it did make me stop and think, and I'm grateful for it, and I am going to play around with it a little bit more. Haribo Star Mix has got to go. It's 1 hour later here, so lunchtime. Lunchtime. What is it now? It's nearly 11, so nearly 12 over in the Netherlands. Enjoy your lunch. Enjoy your lunch. What do you have for lunch in the Netherlands? I know what you have for dinner. I've been there plenty of times. I don't. What is a typical Dutch lunch? Just want to make sure it's worth going there. I mean, I've been there plenty of times. Peter says, glad you liked it. As I say, I did. I enjoyed it, but it was one of those that I could feel the spark going off in my head. It's like, Jesus, yeah, that fella's got a point there, which obviously all of you do on a regular basis. But yes, anyway, people, I am off. I'll turn this into the various bits and pieces. I'll be back tomorrow as well. Won't be hanging around. I mean, I'll do a full show and we'll do all the bits that go with it tomorrow. But tomorrow afternoon, I mentioned in that morning monologue the fact that one of my friends plays guitar and stuff. Myself and Fred are going off to film a music video tomorrow afternoon. 12:30. We've got a venue booked, and my mate's band are going to be playing. They're going to be miming, truth be told, but they're going to be playing, and we're going to be filming it. And I'd like to think I need to clear it with my mate, but before that actually goes live in the wider world, I may show it to you, just to I'll give you a chance to see Fred's video skills, but also give you a chance to hear some music that you probably wouldn't hear anywhere else. So there you are. Stick around for that. It's good. It's weeks away, but stick around for that. Peter says, have a fantastic day. Yes, I once again will echo Peter's sentiments. Have a fantastic day. Look after yourselves. I'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. It's good to be back. Would I prefer to be on the ship? Yes, I would, but it's good to be back among friends and equals rather than entitled Americans. I'll tell you more about that at some point. I've actually written about it. They annoyed me that much. I'll tell you all about that at some point in the future. But until then, everybody, have a fantastic day. Take care of yourselves. See you tomorrow. All the best.